back to the game room. It is day 5 of the 12 Days of Christmas. Today is a good one. It is the biggest package of the 12 Days of Christmas, and we are checking out this, the V3 racing wheel for the N64 from InterAct. And we're going to check out 4 different games on the N64 to see if this one is worth adding to your game room. Okay, let's start with checking out what is inside the box, and there's 2 main things inside this box. One is the brake and gas pedals. They are on their own little unit with their own little cable, and the second, besides the instruction manual down in there, is the steering wheel. Let's check out the features of this one really quick before we start playing with it. Pedals are pretty simple. It's a 2-pedal setup for gas and brake. The steering wheel is pretty straightforward. There's a couple of adjustment points, one for the length of the steering wheel to bring it a little bit closer to you, and one on the back over here that's going to allow you to change the steering wheel angle. There's a plug on the back where the pedals plug in, and also another plug that goes in just like a regular controller to the front of the N64. This one has a bunch of face buttons right up here on the steering wheel, which are all super useful, and there's a vibration function where you can stick a rumble pack right into the front of the steering wheel. Unfortunately for me, I can't get this one working, and that's a real bummer because that would have been a really cool feature to check out. We're going to play 4 games to check out how this steering wheel controls, and the first, a classic. You gotta start with Mario Kart. This one was a little bit too sensitive for me at the extreme ends of the steering wheel. If you just kind of feather the steering just lightly, it kind of performs as you'd expect with a joystick, but as soon as you kind of brake past a certain point, the steering just becomes a little bit too sensitive and made it really hard to control. The other thing that's a little bit awkward is firing items with the Z button, which is placed right in the center of the steering wheel. I found myself kind of having to take my eyes off the screen to reach across for it, especially if you want to have a classic grip on the steering wheel. Reaching across to the center button is just a little bit uncomfortable. Overall, with Mario Kart, I really just prefer the control over the game that I have with that classic controller setup. This definitely is not the controller I'm going to be using for Mario Kart 64. Cruisin' USA seemed like an absolutely perfect fit for this controller, and it absolutely is. The controls had to be assigned just a little bit differently. The pedals were set up as left and right bumpers, and so instead of braking and gassing, I was actually changing the radio. That was a quick fix in the settings to get all the buttons set up exactly the way they wanted them, and once they were, this was absolute perfection. This was just such an arcade vibe, and it just replicated the feels of playing this arcade machine back in the day in an arcade. The controls were perfectly spot on. Nothing felt too overly sensitive or not sensitive enough. It was the perfect fit for Cruisin' USA and absolutely replicated that arcade feeling. Beetle Adventure Racing is a bit of a hidden gem on the N64, although I do hear it being discussed a little bit more these days, and I didn't really feel like the steering wheel was the best fit for this game. The main reason for that is that in the other 2 before that I tried, there wasn't really a lot of need to press the brake pedal down, but Beetle Adventure Racing is a little bit more of a racing sim than it is an arcade vibe, so braking is probably a little bit more important in this one. But that did give me a chance to use the steering wheel without the pedals. I unplugged the pedal setup and used the A and B that are already right here on the controller for gas and brake. It allowed you to get into a little bit more of a reclined position for enjoying this one, and it worked out perfectly. I actually really enjoyed using the gas and brake up on the steering wheel. It was a really good fit for Beetle Adventure Racing, and yeah, that wheel-only setup was awesome. The last of 4 games that I checked out for this racing wheel is Penny Racers, one that I actually hadn't played before, but a really interesting game with a super cool art style. And man, were the controls ever tight using the steering wheel for this game. Penny Racers seemed to be the perfect match for this wheel. It's definitely got that arcade vibe, but man, this steering wheel is ultra responsive. It didn't react at all like any of the other games that I'd played. The steering was super tight, everything felt exactly like it should. It almost felt like this steering wheel was built for Penny Racers. The steering was tight, responsive, and yeah, absolutely worth playing for Penny Racers. So is it worth picking up this InterAct racing wheel to check out in your game room? Sort of depends on a few things, I guess. If you've got a lot of space to store oversized accessories in your game room, then yeah, this is absolutely worth picking up. If you're going to be playing a lot of two-player games, it might feel a little bit weird to have one player using this elaborate setup and then another on a controller, but if you're into single-player racing games on the N64 and you've got a lot of space to store this sort of thing, I think the InterAct racing wheel is absolutely worth picking up and checking out. Let me know if you know of a better racing wheel setup for the N64. I would love to hear all about it down in the comments. Thanks so much for sticking around for day 5 of the 12 Days of Christmas. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I appreciate all the likes, subscribes, comments, all that stuff goes a long way into helping my channel grow. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.